Time waits for no one. All are equal in its flow. All lives born to their ends. Splatoon is a series I have a somewhat complicated history with. This isn't like every other Nintendo franchise I've been into, where I picked a game, got hooked, and proceeded to seek out and play the rest of their respective series either immediately or a while after, usually the latter. You could technically boil my experience with Splatoon down to that, but it actually goes a lot deeper. As silly as it sounds, this series about cephalopod kids shooting each other with paint has resonated with me in such a unique way compared to other games. I've followed the series at least a tiny bit ever since it was first revealed back in 2014. And while it only really stuck with me for a handful of the years that followed, I've still been an active fan of the series, even if it isn't quite my favorite. What stands out to me about Splatoon is how immersive and alive its world feels. Even though it's fictional, it grows and advances at a rate similar to our world, and it's made me reminisce about my life throughout the past decade. Since the first game is now a whole decade old, I think it's fitting to celebrate the series' 10-year anniversary with somewhat of a retrospective, one that breaks down the series' impact on myself and potentially many others. I think it's only fair to start all the way from the beginning. Back in 2014, when 9-year-old me saw Splatoon 1's reveal, I thought it looked fun, but it didn't really grab me. This was back when I mainly stuck to franchises I was into, like Mario, Minecraft, Skylanders, and Plants vs. Zombies, and rarely tried games outside my comfort zone. This was also back when I basically saw video games as a fad. I tried to play only the most relevant games I could, so I could seem up to date with the current trends. I didn't even have a Wii U until that Christmas, which I mainly got for Super Mario 3D World and Mario Kart 8. Anyway, when Splatoon 1 finally released in May 2015, I didn't play it. My Wii U wasn't connected to the internet until around November. My parents could only spoil me so much anyway. I was also kind of already in the middle of saving up for an Xbox One. And not to mention, I already had my fill of online shooters with the Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare games. Anyway, while I never got to experience Splatoon 1 in its prime, I did occasionally catch glimpses of people playing it. Also spoiling myself at the final boss, since I did that with every game back then, and I thought it looked pretty fun. I thought the Splatfest seemed cool, with night falling and the Squid Sisters performing while the community fought to settle a debate. When they were announced to be ending in the summer of 2016 with Callie vs. Marie, I thought to myself, Splatfests are ending? That sucks. I don't know, back then, it never really occurred to young me that a game's support could just drop like that. And in case you were wondering, from what I can recall, I'm pretty sure I rooted for Callie, just because I found her to be a little cuter than Marie. If only I knew what followed. Anyway, there's not much else to say for Splatoon 1. I was too attached to other games to give it a go, something that wouldn't bother me until years later. Anyway, let's move on from the first Splatoon to my first Splatoon. Having never played the first game, when I saw footage of a second Splatoon game in the Nintendo Switch reveals trailer way back when, my interest was piqued. Obviously I was more hyped for Mario Odyssey, but the thought of getting the chance to play a new Splatoon game in its prime, on a new console no less, was an exciting one. But due to me not getting a Switch for a while because of money reasons, I missed out on most of 2's first year. I only spoiled the final boss for myself again, saw people simp for Marina while making fun of Pearl's looks, and occasionally observed the Splatfest from afar. Eventually, I finally got myself a Nintendo Switch for Christmas in 2017, along with my first game for it, Super Mario Odyssey. Around 5 months later, in May however, I joined a community surrounding a very small YouTuber on Since Splatoon 2 was said YouTuber's favorite game at the time, many people in the community were into that game. So, not wanting to be left out, I decided to finally get the game for myself, making it the 6th game I ever got for my Switch. To put it simply, I was hooked. 2018, particularly the middle third, was a special time. Avengers Infinity War had taken the world by storm. A new Smash was on the horizon. I was preparing to leave elementary school and begin high school. That entire year was one of the best of my life. The last time I truly, consistently felt optimistic and happy in this world. Yeah, I was an annoying, insufferable 13-year-old back then, but I also felt carefree. And looking back, Splatoon 2, as well as the time I shared with that online friend group, were big reasons why. We may have hung out together more on and a Minecraft server we shared for a while, but Splatoon still took up a lot of our circle. Even putting aside the time I spent with that group, I still have a ton of fond memories with Splatoon 2. Setting foot into Inkopolis Square for the first time, learning how the basic movement and shooting works, winning or losing matches, and using the spoils to dress up my character and obtain more weapons was a lot of fun. Yeah, I was awful at it, sticking to turf war and only playing some of the worst, most mindless weapons for a while, but still, it was such a unique take on an online shooter that oozed with charm. The world it took place in felt alive, as if it were a living, breathing organism. There was so much intricate world building, the characters felt like they led actual lives, the music felt so authentic despite the varied quality of the overall soundtrack, the hub and maps all felt like real, lived-in locations, and the events in the game were chronologically placed as if they happened in real time. Because they technically did. Club Penguin had been shut down for little more than a year by that point, so this was the most I'd been immersed in a virtual world like this in quite some time. Inkopolis was so unabashedly urban, with how bustling, packed, and full of life it felt, giving me more appreciation for some of the real cities near me. Silly as it sounds, it made me feel even more excited to see my surrounding environments than I already was. Don't question it, please. On the other hand, Octo Canyon, the setting of the hero mode, was so distinct and surreal. The psychedelic environments and abstract soundtrack really set it apart, but the constantly setting sun over the horizon in the hub world as you got further down still made it feel so vivid and chill. I think that's the best word to describe Splatoon 2 for me. Chill. I was able to get lost in such a hip, chill fictional world where it almost felt like I lived my own life within the game. Even when I lost a match hard, the crisp visuals and aesthetics paired with the calm matchmaking music provided such a chill vibe. It was the perfect game to pair with my leave of elementary school and to kick off the summer. And I haven't even gotten to the Octo expansion yet. I wasn't considering getting Octo expansion for a while, but upon seeing everyone else around me play it, and considering my still bad case of FOMO, I decided to get it myself and see what all the hype was about. I was beyond hooked. Octo expansion was a vastly different and more enthralling experience compared to the rest of the series up to that point. Like, it's honestly Splatoon's Empire Strikes Back, if you will. Compared to the hip, cheery feel of the world above, this DLC felt much darker and more desolate. It was far more lonely, oppressive, and punishing thanks to its stylish yet melancholic presentation coupled with its unrelenting difficulty. This was my first experience with a legitimately difficult game without the safety net of save states. There was a massive variety of unique challenges that pushed me to my limits, and finally overcoming them after countless failed attempts felt so satisfying, as if nothing could stop me. Because despite how hard the journey was, I was still determined to pass all the tests, reach the surface, and give 8 a good home and life. This was when I became invested in the story and characters of Splatoon. I began to see Pearl as the spunky, eccentric, yet secretly soft hype lady instead of just the gremlin. I finally saw Marina as the shy, nerdy immigrant who just wants peace and acceptance instead of just the hot one. I saw their relationship in a whole new light, as two misfits with wildly different lineages who just want to get out there and make names for themselves. Yet it still took me several years to figure out that they were likely a thing, something that took my sister less than a minute. And the finale. Oh man. The finale of Octo expansion was and still is one of my favorite final acts in any game I've ever played. Seeing the game throw a curveball and do away with the structure it's had throughout the long ordeal, replacing it with an action-packed, emotionally charged escape sequence blew my mind. Making my way out on my own volition, sneaking past the guards, getting my own weapons myself, flying around with the inkjet, all with some of Off the Hook's best work playing in the background was an experience for the ages. Reaching Inkopolis as the sun rose over it was a sight to behold, and the fight with the Nil statue that followed kept me on my toes. Paired with an active time limit and a unique game over screen, which I saw many times, it was an intense fight. Finally detonating the last hyperbomb as I listened to Ebb and Flow for the first time, watching Pearl demolish the statue with her killer whale, and looking over the city I just saved afterwards is a memory I will always treasure. The Octo expansion was overall fantastic, and the finale was still one of the best experiences I've ever had playing a Nintendo game. This was when I went from liking Splatoon to loving it. And in case you're wondering, yes, I did go back to fight Inner Agent 3. It was probably the hardest boss I've ever beaten in a video game, but I still beat her after several hundred attempts and put on the gold toothpick to flex. Not long after, I experienced my first Splatfest. Pulp versus no pulp. It was a lot of fun, with night falling over Inkopolis, a decked out square, new battle music from Off the Hook, and even a new map. I had an absolute blast, even though my team lost hard and I didn't take my loss well at all. The rest of that summer was so damn fun. Hopping back to Splatoon 2 from Minecraft or Breath of the Wild to try out a new weapon or map, play a new Splatfest, or just duke it out with my friends was an absolute blast. The reveals of the Kenza weapons, the new subs and specials, and the last main weapons were all really cool, and Splatoween was pretty fun too. However, late into 2018, I began to lose interest in the game for several reasons. 1, I was only sticking to Turf War and didn't play ranked to avoid fears of dropping ranks. 2, updates for the game were slowing down. And 3,
Super Smash Brothers Ultimate!
This was my most anticipated game all throughout 2018, and once it dropped, I lost pretty much all desire to play Splatoon 2. My friend group moving on from that game as well didn't help either. At that time, while I did take gaming at least a little more seriously as an art form, having played some of the older Mario and Zelda games, I still largely treated it as somewhat of a fad and would just jump to the newest game whenever I could. Splatoon 2's content wasn't over at that time, however. It still had a few special Splatfests with Frosty Fest and Spring Fest in the first half of 2019. Neither of which caught my attention. What did catch my attention for at least a little bit, however, was the Final Fest that summer. I expected a predictable theme akin to Splatoon 1's Final Fest, like Pearl versus Marina or Squid Sisters versus Off the Hook, so getting a philosophical choice of a world ruled by chaos or order was an unexpected surprise. Seeing the trailer with an epic orchestral medley of various songs paired with every other character besides Pearl and Marina choosing a team, except Sheldon for some reason, was so hype. Doubly so when the in-game announcement came with a suddenly more serious tone, with The Plan playing in the background, along with Pearl straight up invoking a law forcing the losing team to accept the winning team's world. This wasn't going to be a waifu war like what Splatoon 1 had. The Splatocalypse was gearing up to be a full-on, all-out war. After some very careful thinking, I decided to choose the side of chaos, simply due to a chaotic, unstable world sounding way more fun. I then proceeded to ignore all the news about the Final Fest following the announcement and only showed up for the first day and the results. You gotta understand, I was still pretty unengaged with Splatoon at that point, focusing far more on Smash, Xenoblade, Mario Maker 2, and getting a new phone. Once Pearl confessed to Marina live on camera and I received my snails, that was my last fling with Splatoon for a long time. For the next few years, Splatoon kinda sat at the back of my mind. I had moved on to other games, pretty much fully shifting over to single-player games from throughout the years. The main shooter series I got hooked on during this time was Doom! Oh, and I also revisited the Garden Warfare games for the hell of it, and tried to make a video in the second game that never saw the light of day. Also, due to my newfound attachment to longer, more story-driven RPGs like Xenoblade and Final Fantasy, I had finally begun to see video gaming as an effective means of storytelling. The days where I purely chased the trendiest games to me were long gone. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, however. My experience with high school was genuine misery, and all the other awful things happening in our world at the time just added to the sheer overwhelm I felt. My only goal each day was to get through my classes, get home, and then just go on my phone or play video games for the rest of the day to experience just a few moments of comfort. I went from a joyful kid to a depressed teen. I barely socialized with anyone as I felt so ostracized from the world and had nothing I felt comfortable talking about. Many things that kept me happy in the past, such as Splatoon, collected dust. I rarely gave the series much thought. This is no more apparent than in the February 2021 Nintendo Direct, which marked the initial reveal of Splatoon 3. While all the still dedicated fans were losing their shit, I just thought it looked kinda cool. I liked how I could feel the impact of Team Chaos's victory with Splatsville's more run-down look, and how fast-paced the gameplay looked compared to 2, but ultimately, I wasn't sold on it. In a following direct that September, when the second trailer showed off more maps and our first look at the story mode, my thoughts more or less stayed the same. I thought it looked fun, but nothing groundbreaking that I'd spent $80 on day one. For me, it was heavily overshadowed by Kirby and the Forgotten Land and The Mario movie cast reveal. In the direct that following February, we got another trailer that just announced that Salmon Run was coming back, and I honestly couldn't care less. That trailer was overshadowed by Xenoblade 3, which became my most anticipated game of 2022 and my favorite game on the Switch. I was so uninterested that I didn't even tune in for the dedicated Splatoon 3 direct that happened that summer. I mean, everything we had seen thus far was basically already in 2, so what could 3 possibly have in store?
Splatoonus. 3 teams fight at the same time. Check the news while doing other activities.
Alright, you've made your case. With my memories of Splatoon still foggy at best, I joined 3's Splatfest world premiere on Team Scissors. Being my first time playing Splatoon in over 3 years, I got my ass kicked. I still had some fun and then actually wanted to get the full game when it came out. It only took me until like 2 weeks before release. However, due to money problems and Persona 5, I didn't get it until about a month after launch. But when I did, everything changed. When I first got Splatoon 3, the first thing I did was blaze through the story mode, doing a few turf war matches in between. I had a lot of fun with the story mode. Alterna was an interesting setting full of thought-provoking lore. There were numerous fun, creative challenges, albeit not to the same extent as Octo Expansion, and the final boss was super flashy and fun, complete with a rendition of Calamari Incantation that slaps so hard I still can't stop listening to it. After breaking my back beating after Alterna, I thought I was only going to keep playing the online combat for about a week or two, sticking to turf war and only returning for Splatfest and the then upcoming DLC campaign. It is what I had done with nearly every other online multiplayer game I had played after all, and I was all in on single player games by that point. If only I knew back then how much this silly little game about squids shooting each other would take over my life. Yeah, if you couldn't already tell, when I started playing 3, I just couldn't stop. The core gameplay felt so much faster paced than it did in 2, with tighter controls, new movement text, and unbeknownst to me at the time, worse map design. Sure, that paired with the awful matchmaking made this game feel far less forgiving and newcomer friendly, but that only encouraged me to play more, learn more, and get better. Thankfully, 3 gave me so many reasons to come back for more, compared to 2, which after the weekly updates were over with, only really had the golden experience you got at such a slow rate. 3 had various systems to keep me hooked. Of course, there was this game's season pass stand-in in the form of the catalog. If I got at least 1 win a day, I could get a new reward for free, but as big of a role as it played, that wasn't the main contributing factor to me sticking with this game for so long, since there were other, more important reasons. First, skippable news. As charming as Off the Hook was, I hated having to sit through their flirting every time I booted 2 up, especially if I wanted to be quick. Letting me skip the news in 3 made it so much easier to get right into the action or just quickly pick up and play. Second, while you're actively queuing for a match, you can now train and warm up in the lobby. As fun as the combat in 2 was, having to put the controller down and watch a mostly static screen for minutes at a time while waiting for my next match really soured my morale. And now having the option to train before or in between matches kept me consistently pumped and prepared, almost making up for how long the queue times could be sometimes. I honestly spent long periods of time just honing my skills in the lobby, even when I wasn't queued up for battle, just because of how fluid and fun the movement and shooting feel. And third, Sheldon licenses. This was 3's new currency used exclusively for weapons, which you get by leveling up and getting a weapon to 1 star. It took me a little bit to understand how the new system worked, since the game does not explain it well. Eventually, I did, and I honestly vastly prefer paying these licenses over grinding up obscene amounts of gold. I found myself trying out so many different weapons, far more than I ever would have considered before, some of which would eventually become favorites. Sure, it was still a little grindy, but getting to play new weapon and kit combos and getting rewarded with more weapons afterwards is such an underrated change. Thanks to all these legs 3 had over 2, I just couldn't stop playing. I tried out so many different weapons in Turf War to find the one that suits me best, hone my skills and ranked since I found my footing, and because 3's Anarchy point system is a little generous, and I found myself hopping on Salmon Run pretty much every rotation that didn't have a butchered map from 2. I didn't even really like Ranked or Salmon Run in 2, so that's impressive. My evolving love for the series extended beyond this game. I began to read more of the lore and got more attached to the world and characters. I followed a lot more members of the community. I got a physical copy of the first game so I could somehow experience the series' beginnings, though it was mostly just for the Octavio fight. I replayed the Octo expansion in an attempt to relive my memories. It's still amazing as ever, don't get me wrong, but it didn't exactly hit on round 2 the way it did 4.5 years prior. It was probably just because I got older and played more games. I also looked back upon the final Festive 2, and at last realized how fucking stupid I was for barely showing up. Seriously, it was a big, huge war for the fate of the world, and I only showed up for its least hype day. Because of that, I vowed that I would stick with 3 until its Final Fest eventually came, and when it did, I would play it for as much as I physically could. That way, it would leave a bigger impact on me, and I'd be able to secure my memories of it, which I failed to do in 2. However, between the Final Fest fears and the Octo expansion replay, I began looking back at 2 more and more and noticed that something felt off about 3. It's around the first third of 2023 by this point. I was in my final few months of high school, and I had clocked dozens of hours into Splatoon 3. While I still generally enjoyed it, it never really hit me the same way 2 did back in 2018. Maybe it's because I was younger and more cheerful then, and had more friends to share the experience with. Maybe it's just because I preferred the vibes and presentation of 2. Or maybe it's because 3 was bogged down by repetitive maps, scuffed matchmaking, unbalanced Splatfest, and infrequent, minuscule updates. Regardless, I still found myself yearning for the specific joy I felt back when I first played 2. The urban, lively feel, the joy of experiencing something new each month or even week, the unique whimsy of each Splatfest. Almost none of those feelings had come back. Splatsville at that point felt way more like any other video game area than the lively locale Inkopolis was. The more I played, the more I looked back at 2, and the more doom scrolling I did on Twitter, the more cracks I saw within 3. I noticed that the devs have been adding far too few weapon kits, modes, fixes, and other content to fill in the 3-month gaps between updates. The new maps all felt like the same repetitive, linear snowball fests. It didn't help that most of the maps returning from 2 were either bad, ugly, or both, and especially that all the returning maps from Splatoon 1 got mangled into shells of their former selves. I remember spending a long time looking at pictures of the old maps, noticing how much better they all looked, especially Mahi Mahi Resort. It was depressing, not only because the series' map design got worse over time with pointless butchering of its best maps, but also because I realized just how much I missed by neglecting to play Splatoon 1 in its prime. Despite their similarities, each Splatoon game feels vastly different from each other, with unique tones, balancing, and design philosophies, and the fact that I missed out on truly experiencing the series' origins firsthand really hurt. I could always play a several-year-old single-player game and get the same, or a similar experience to those who played it at launch, but for multiplayer games, it's not that simple. A multiplayer game relies on its servers and player base to stay alive, and as the years go by, the players move on to other games, and the servers can just straight up shut down. If you want to truly appreciate a multiplayer game, it's best to do so in its prime. And the fact that I completely skipped 1, fell out of the loop with 2, and henceforth didn't make the most out of either game really stung. To cope with that, as well as 3 being in the rough state it was, I begged for the sizzle season of 2023 to bring this game salvation, with map reworks, a good new map, tons of weapon kits, and other fixes. And what did that season bring us? 2 more mediocre maps, a challenge mode with hilariously small time windows, less gear and weapons than previous seasons, and not a single map tweak in sight. Yeah, I did not take this very well at all, spending more time bullying the devs on Twitter than playing the actual game, which might have been a little childish looking back. What really stung about such a bad season of the game that summer was that, to me, Splatoon is the perfect summer game. Not only do the vibes perfectly match the season without school, but 1 and 2 both released and had their biggest updates and final fests around or during summer. And to see the latest game fumble its first summer so badly was just painful. At that point, I had enough. To get all my pent-up emotions out, I threw together a video detailing all my problems with Splatoon 3 by that point, which ended up being one of my best performing videos to date, showing that many other people had the same problems as well. And to be honest, barring the parts where I openly insult the devs, I still stand by everything I said in that video. I didn't just make it to critique the game, however, as I also thought making a video would help me overcome my, frankly, obsessive hatred of the game's state. My anger towards some of the garbage I reviewed in the past largely died down after my videos on them, so I thought making a video on Splatoon 3 would have the same effect. Didn't work. For the rest of that summer, I largely spent my time playing other games, like Final Fantasy, Pikmin, and Persona to name a few. I didn't even bother completing the catalog that season due to how burned out and done with the game I was. I only planned to show up for certain Splatfests in the then upcoming side order at that point. And I also set my expectations very low for the following Drizzle season. However, when the season was revealed, and especially as it dropped, something unexpected happened. The Drizzle season added 2 brand new maps with crab-leg capital and ship-shaped cargo, and to everyone's surprise, they were good. At least that's what people thought at the time, since general opinions on them have soured a lot since then, but I don't know, I still enjoy them. As I mentioned before in my Splatoon 3 map ranking, in regards to Crab Leg specifically, I had so much fun with it that it single-handedly restored my faith in this game. It was so pretty and open that I hopped online whenever I saw it on rotation just to play it in particular. That never happened for me with any other map in the series before. Since we finally got 2 fun maps after a full year of bad Tetris blocks, I had hoped that the devs were once again willing to try and experiment with the map design again. They also reworked Mahi Mahi Resort to make it larger and easier to navigate that season. I still would have preferred if they just brought back the old layout, but that too gave me hope that they were willing to fix the broken maps. And said hope was soon dashed, since that turned out to be the only rework in the game to make its map good. But it wasn't just the change in map direction that restored my interest in this game. Special Splatfests were finally happening, starting with the 1-year anniversary fest, Shiver v Fry v Big Man. Honestly, it was pretty much just like any other Splatfest in this game, Turf War on one day and Tricolor on the other, now with extra toxic results, but the new maps and the new song made it feel far more memorable than it would have been otherwise. I even started to get glimpses of the same joy I felt from Splatoon 2 during that fest. I don't know how. Maybe I just let my anxieties go and had fun for the hell of it, like I did 5 years prior. Anyway, Splatoween was also a treat, with decked out hubs, amazing new outfits for all the idols, and even some altered music. It made me feel at least a little Halloween spirit that I hadn't felt in so long. Even after that, there's still an even bigger motive for me returning to this game. Remember when I said I tried out many different weapons to get more weapons? To tell you the truth, I mostly only played with them in Turf War. In Ranked, I pretty much always stuck with a 10-attack splatter shot, as that was the weapon I trusted myself with the most. Once I 5-starred it, however, I decided to look for other weapons to play, when I happened upon the Range Blaster. After trying it in Turf, I took it into Ranked, where it quickly became one of my favorite weapons in the game. It led to me bringing even more weapons into Ranked, like the Slosher, the Tri-Slosher, the Splat Dualies, the Heavy Splatling, the S-Blast, and many more in the future. When the Chill season was on the horizon, rather than coping, dreading it, or having cautious optimism, I was genuinely really excited for it. I spent a lot of time on Twitter carefully examining every clip and image I could find of Robo Ramen, the Bluefin Depot remake, and the new specials. Frosty Fest also happened at the beginning of January 2024, bringing its own wintry brand of outfits, ink effects, decor, and music. I was really enamored by the whole event, especially with how pretty the ink looked on Crab Leg, which was the Tricolor map of that fest. I once again felt the old whimsy from Splatoon 2 for a bit, just like with the Anniversary Fest. While we're on the topic of Splatoon 2, it was around that time when I went back to that game, mainly to gather footage for the map ranking I was doing. I did the same thing with Splatoon 1 a couple months prior, but since I didn't play it in its prime like it did with 2, that's not really important to this video. I guess it was still nice to have a chance to play the original online combat and hear its music before it went down. Back to 2, I was excited for the trip down memory lane, until I remembered, oh yeah, the game and my memories of it are separate beasts. Don't get me wrong, the presentation was dazzling as always, and it was nice to hear this game's songs in battle again. The good ones, at least. But at the same time, playing the game again after so long made it more clear as to why I fell out of the loop with it. The unskippable news is an obvious turnoff, but there's also the lack of things to do while waiting for a match to start. It made me realize just how significant the training ground in 3 is, since without it, you have to put the controller down until you're thrust into a match you're not fully ready for. The controls felt stiffer, probably because I was so used to having the squid roll. The balancing was a joke, getting more weapons felt more tedious, and since it's been so long since its updates ended and everyone's moved on to 3 by now, it doesn't really have much to offer in terms of multiplayer combat. unless you get lucky and get a full private battle room together. Don't get me wrong, I still love Splatoon 2, but the joy I got from it back in 2018 is something that just can't be brought back. Despite how much the memories rushed through me as I rewatched my footage for the video, I still wasn't exactly gaining anything new. Back then, my only real aim in Splatoon 2 was to have fun. Not to grind out a catalog, not to seize the moment, and certainly not to relive memories of bygone days. What I didn't realize back then was that I wasn't just having fun. I was making memories. Memories that would resonate with me years later, that I could never replicate or replace no matter how hard I try. 2 was my first Splatoon after all, and your first time with something is usually what makes the best memories. I could rewatch any movie or replay any game I love many times, yet they'd never usually hit the same as on my first experience. I could easily boot up Minecraft today and have a good time building a lame-ass shoebox house, but it could never replicate the times I spent doing whatever I felt like doing in my worlds all those years ago. Remember when I said Octo Expansion, despite still being amazing, didn't hit the same on my replay? This is all why. I can still play it and have fun, but the journey, the discoveries, the twists, when you've already seen it all, the effect kinda wears off. I can't experience it all again in quite the same way. The same goes true for many other things. I could never play Ocarina of Time, or play Xenoblade, or play Terraria, or play Persona 5, or watch Avatar, or watch Violet Evergarden, or watch Into the Spider-Verse for the first time ever again. As incredible as they all are, my first experiences with them are memories far too precious to ever relive. That's enough dwelling on the general flow of time for now, since the time is now February 2024, the month Side Order released. I had been extremely excited for this DLC for a long time leading up to its release, and when it finally came out, it was really good. While the shallow story was kind of a letdown, especially with it having to follow an Octo expansion's footsteps and not featuring any of the scrapped concept art that was featured in the first teaser that made it look way darker than it actually was. Seriously, why did they do this? I had an absolute blast with its roguelite style gameplay. I did so many different runs with different weapons, experimenting with different builds and trying to make the most broken weapons I possibly could. It also marked the grand returns of 2 things. One was Off the Hook, baby! And the other was Inkopolis Square, the Splatoon 2 hub world. After spending several years away from this place in the Plaza and Splatsville, not counting the trip I made to gather data for the map ranking, finally returning to the place where I began my journey through this world was surreal. It was as if I had finally come home after wandering around without a purpose for so long. As you can imagine, it became my hub of choice the moment it dropped. Watching Off the Hook perform again during the following Splatfest after so long with new songs and an even more decked out hub was a sight to behold. It was almost as if I had been propelled back in time to 2018, experiencing my first Splatfest all over again. It was also around this time when I finally uploaded my Splatoon 2 map ranking, and henceforth, my intense longing for Splatoon 2's glory days was long gone. All that mattered at that point, in the universe of Splatoon, was what went on at that time and onwards. The Sizzle season that followed was, to me, easily the game's best season. It's like the devs were aware of how nothing the previous season was and did everything in their power to make the final season of the game the best it could be. I still kinda wish they had this energy throughout the game's life and not just right at the end, but I took what I got. They saved the best weapons and kits for last. Nearly all of them were tons of fun, with the custom range blaster and charcoal decapitator becoming 2 of my mains. Not that it excuses certain weapons having to wait 2 years for another kit, but it's still a great lineup. The new map, Lemuria Hub, became my favorite map in the game at the time, with its fun layout and gorgeous background, a sentiment that no one else seems to share. And fresh off the heels from the 3 seasonal Splatfests returning from 2, we got a new one in the form of Summer Nights. 2 didn't have it since its summer slots were taken up by its anniversary and Final Fest. Out of the 4 seasonal Splatfest themes, this was by far my favorite, with its serene tropical presentation and gorgeous ink effect and colors. After the dud that was the 2023 Sizzle season, the 2024 season was nearly everything I wanted. A hip, chill, yet still fun and chaotic game that embraces the season of summer. I didn't even think for a second about reliving or recapturing my feelings from Splatoon 2, nor did I cling on to the false hope that the devs would magically make the game perfect overnight. I just let most of my anxieties go and had fun. Looking back, I don't think I even specifically needed 2's maps, lighting, and songs to invoke the same feelings once again. And while there are still many, and I mean many things about 3 I would have done differently, that dismisses none of the fun and joy it brought me. As long as I'm having fun and making memories in the present, how much do my past experiences matter? The thought of just kicking back and having some fun gave me more hope for the future of this game than ever. A few days after Summer Nights ended, I went for a run, picturing all the insane concepts for third kits they could do in the future, assuming they were saving the final fest for the series' 10th anniversary the following May and would use third kits to fill in the gap. However, once I got home that evening, I was hit with a bombshell heard around the space-time continuum. At long last, Nintendo unveiled the final fest of Splatoon 3, the Grand Festival. From the trailer alone, it was clear that they were pulling out all the stops to make this the series' finest 72 hours. From the dramatic presentation, to the brand new dedicated hub, to the fact that all 3 idol groups were leading the teams instead of just Deep Cut, this was destined to be a fest for the ages. Even beyond that, there was something about Grand Fest that was far different from past Final Fests. Splatoon 1's Final Fest was a waifu war. Splatoon 2's was an actual war, but Splatoon 3's was no war. It was a celebration of the series' art, legacy, and impact, and that was no more evident than with its theme: past versus present versus future. Unlike Callie and Marie, who had quite the rivalry in Splatoon 1, and Chaos and Order, which are fundamentally clashing ideals no matter how you spin it, the past, present, and future are eternally intertwined. The future becomes the present, which then becomes the past. One cannot exist without the other two. Up until that point, I rarely thought about my time on this earth. There might have been times where I reminisced or broke down in fear of what may come, but I still mostly just go with the flow, only doing what I feel like doing at the moment without considering what may result of it. But last summer, it hit me. My nostalgic memories, like when I first played 2, were once the present time. Had I not chosen to play Splatoon 2 back then, I wouldn't have those fond memories I have today. Had I not gotten hooked on Wii Sports around 15 years ago, I probably wouldn't be playing video games today. And while the past is behind us, the future isn't set. What we do now will affect how the future plays out, and we'll just have to deal with that when the time comes. The past is what it is because of what happened then, and the future will only form from what happens now and when it comes. Ultimately, this is why I decided to ally with Team Present. It's also because I'm a huge Off the Hook fan, but I still stand by the present being the most important, since it's what we're all currently living in. Once I made my choice, I went all in. I made the then upcoming event my whole personality, I pre-ordered a Team Present shirt from Nintendo that definitely arrived on time, and I begged for my dad to finish my new setup and PC in time. That last part wasn't easy since he went on a month-long vacation and the PC took us way longer to build than we thought, but we still pulled through in time for the main event. I even began streaming on both Twitch and YouTube for the first time, since I wanted to get as many people on board the hype train as I could. I couldn't stream as much of the Longer Than Concord sneak peek as I wanted due to the PC problems, but I was at least able to stream the announcement and the preceding big run. Pretty much everything was going accordingly. But even so, within the weeks leading up to the Grand Festival, I felt an uncontrollable wave of anxiety build within me. My heart couldn't stop racing no matter where I went. These feelings got in the way of what should have been a peaceful vacation with my family towards the end of the summer, and they even made it hard for me to perform simple but necessary tasks like eating or sleeping. Maybe it was out of overexcitement, but the pains I got in my chest from my rapidly beating heart didn't make it feel that way. Was I just not ready to see this game I've been with for 2 years come to an end? After all, I did vow to show up for the entire Final Fest early on in the game's life, with the knowledge that it wouldn't happen for a while. But now that it was right around the corner, I didn't know what to think. What if it ends up being a letdown? What if I don't make the most of my time at the festival? Can't I just not go? Thoughts like these held my mind hostage for days on end, and I was starting to reconsider if it was really worth it. Despite all these anxieties, I kept my head held as high as possible. And once the time came, I arrived at the festival grounds as calmly as I could. The colorful evenings of the first 2 days of the Grand Festival were an utter delight. Wandering around the grounds, taking photos, watching the idols perform various beloved songs, and seeing the community's reactions in-game and on social media was an experience to behold. And heading into battle to hear classic songs from the Squid Sisters and Off the Hook return one last time for the biggest event was exceedingly hype. Despite all that, the festival had not yet reached its peak. That came on the third day, with the fall of the Night of Unity. Since the moment it first dropped in late August, Three Wishes solidified itself as my favorite piece of music in the franchise and one of my favorite songs of all time. Getting all 7 idols to perform a song together was a monumental task they had to do right, and they soared above and beyond to give us the perfect celebration of this series and its legacy. This song blends all 3 groups' styles together seamlessly, starting off calm before building and building to a powerful climax complete with a roaring crowd and dazzling light show throughout. They even went out of their way to write human language lyrics which perfectly reflect each idol's personality and team of choice. For the first time, and maybe ever, since I'm not that much of a music guy, I'm gonna go through the song and pick apart certain lyrics that really stand out to me and give my take on them, going in the order in which they are sung. I'm using Man on the Internet's English cover of the song as a base, and I'd also recommend listening to the full song yourself to get the full picture. Without further ado, let's begin.
We come far, you and I, on your journey.
Sights and sounds, highs and lows, all that we've seen.
At that point, Splatoon had been around for almost a decade. The kids who played Splatoon 1 on launch are adults now. I was in elementary school when the series began, and now I'm in college. A lot's happened since then. Not all of it was good, but we still managed to push through and make it to today. We've endured so much hardship and have grown so much since then, as have the Squid Sisters, who have become some of their world's most iconic names.
Did you think back then we'd be united? Nothing's cannot choose you.
The Squid Sisters and their career had humble beginnings, with them going to the city and winning a youth folk singing contest. After a few more years of grinding, they rose to become Inkopolis' biggest pop stars. Their songs have touched the hearts of millions, both in our world with how popular the sisters are online, and in theirs with how they and their songs inspired or even freed many people, primarily the Octarians, one of which is literally performing with them. It also applies to the Splatoon series of games in general, beginning on a dying console with minimal content, only for subsequent updates, events, and sequels to expand the world, flesh out the lore, and create countless fans, solidifying itself as one of Nintendo's flagship franchises. With such small starts, you'd never expect that either of these icons would become household names, yet they still managed to pull through.
Star at night,
Glowing bright,
bringing us your light. A message to us from far in the past, saying shine. Words you write,
line by line,
showing us your sides. Passed down to us, so we sing them today. We feel
If you somehow didn't already know, Splatoon takes place in a world where humans died out and sea creatures have become the dominant race. Despite humanity's fall, their legacy lives on. Inkfish society is very similar to our own, but with much more hope and joy. The Splatfest prompts are all age-old questions left behind by humanity. The Alternologues in 3 reveal that the last humans who lived underground longed to see the surface, which ultimately led to their demise. Despite that, the crystals that line the fallen walls of the domes which contained their collective wishes, were absorbed by sea creatures, urging them to travel to the surface. The very same wishes that formed countless stories, poems, songs, and other works of art, passed down to the next dominant species who now carry our torch. Nothing is more powerful than art and expression, as they can even survive mass extinctions to be honored thousands of years after we've died out. And let me remind you all that this is coming from a silly game where squids and octopi shoot each other with paint. If something like that can impact or change lives, anything and anyone can.
Hey, I'm seeing things clear. The past is in the rear. I'm a realist. I live in the now and seize it.
Pearl is very clearly content with how she is now, stating she wants to live out each day to the fullest, not wasting a moment. She truly wants to make every moment something to remember, especially with and for her greatest gift. Speaking of which,
I've been searching all of my life. Finally, I found my North Star.
her whole life up until she first heard the calamari incantation, Marina was just another cog in the ruthless machine that was the Octarian army. Once she reached the surface, met Pearl, and formed Off the Hook, she finally found the role she was meant for. She literally and metaphorically climbed out of the dark hole and into the light.
See life sets you down on your life and a 3-year step. Get your mind messed up. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. If we're push one through, can't do.
Spoken like someone who, despite her upbringing, was basically a laughingstock until she met Marina and found her dream role. Off the Hook's entire theme is self-acceptance and seizing every moment. Life can throw a curveball at you more often than not. Moving on from the past can be hard at times, but freeing yourself from that closed mindset can open up infinite possibilities. After all,
When is the moment you should chase your dreams? It's right now. Here we go with the flow, no one knows the future. On the run, so much fun when no one has yet been. Monsters that we face ahead. Waking up when we meet a true threat.
Deep Cut's segment screams confidence for facing the unknown future. What lies ahead is not set in stone. The world constantly changes, and nobody truly expects what'll happen next, a theme constantly explored because of Chaos's reign. Despite this, they clearly don't care about how tough a future hardship might be, because
Standing up so strong. It's all thanks to the power of our bond. When we find out what lies and our journeys end. When I get there together with my dearest friend.
as unpredictable as the game of life may be, it's the connections and experiences we share that make us look forward to the coming days. Connections to people, places, and things, and the thoughts of what comes next for them gives us all reason to go on, no matter how dark everything may seem. Because no matter the odds, life is something worth living to its fullest. The song draws to a close with a line from each group representing their theme.
As we walk to real place forever.
The Squid Sisters are all about legacy, and this lyric embodies that. The memories you create will last a lifetime. The impacts you leave will be remembered for generations, even long after you're gone.
Came you here from sunny face and every other day perfect.
That's just Off the Hook being gay. But it also shows how important it can be to form a connection with someone where you both accept yourselves and each other. Appreciating yourself and those around you can brighten up even the darkest of days. As Fry claims, no matter how dire things may seem, as long as we keep our heads high and appreciate what those around us do for us, we can fulfill our greatest hopes. I think that's what this song and this series in general embodies. Hope. Hope that we can find peace in the face of despair. Hope that we can all equally face the future head on, prepared for what happens next. Hope that even after we're gone, our legacy will live on. Because even in a world where the human race is long gone, our hopes and dreams are still celebrated by those of this new world. The loop ends symbolically with the Squid Sisters, the duo who've been here since the beginning, taking charge with a more somber tone, ending with the line,
No start, no end, it lasts for all eternity.
The flow of time will never stop. Lives begin, flourish, and end over and over again. It may feel cruel at times, giving and taking away so much at a seemingly faster rate as life goes on. But the memories, connections, and vows you make are stronger still, lasting potentially for all eternity. This entire song, and the rest of the Grand Festival, is everything. The culmination of a decade's worth of development for this world and cast, a beautiful celebration of the flow of time and how far we've all come, a reward for those who've stuck with the series since its beginning, and a powerful message to live out your life and keep your hope alive no matter the odds. Seeing this song performed live at the Grand Festival was a moment that nothing from 2 could even dream of matching, and I will cherish it for as long as I live. Now that the performance of a lifetime was over with, all I had to do now was step out into the Grand Splatlands Bowl to end this. I waited the entire 2-hour after-party for the results, listening to each idol group's credits song bittersweetly as I did. We all fought hard, but in the end, it was Team Past who took home the victory. Even though I lost the biggest Splatfest ever, I felt content. Happy, even. That's an emotion I barely felt throughout that year. Perhaps I was blissful at how good Grandfest was. Maybe I felt proud of myself for facing my fears and closing this chapter on my life. Regardless, I returned to Inkopolis Square with a bittersweet smile on my face. It may have been sad that the Grand Festival was over, but I smiled anyway, because it happened. It's been about 8 months since that tranquil dawn, and a lot's happened since then. We got a few extra seasonal Splatfests, and they were fine. Nintendo finally unveiled their next console, and it seems like they want to head into a brand new era, for better or for worse. Right now, the Splatoon series is kind of in its off-season. The awkward period between games where we're throwing specials at each other as we wait for the next game. But even though it seems like time is standing still, or even reversing in some cases, it moves forward as always. We can't pause, we can't fast forward, we can't rewind, we can only press on. There have been times where I've wished I could go back in time to do things differently, right my wrongs, or just relive a precious memory. These days, I often feel like time moves too quickly and wish I could pause to take a breather or get something done in time. Few things are as cruel as the flow of time. Things begin and end at its uncontrollable command. The life or runtime of a video game and the life of a human being such as you and me are such things. Lives have high points. They have low points, and like all things, they eventually come to an end. But while a life may be finite, the memories made within one are not. They can last a lifetime, potentially even multiple if you share your experiences with others. You can't replicate or replace your memories, but they'll always be there to look back on, to learn or grow past something, or to just remind yourself of better days. Christmas is one day. A vacation is only a few days or weeks. But the memories of them can last forever. It may feel like everything is all hopeless now, and you'll never again feel the way you did in your greatest memories. But as your life goes on, you're still forming new memories. Not all of which are pleasant, mind you, but the ones that are can really stick with you and make you feel just as good, if not better than you did during your cherished experiences, even if said experiences are wildly different. I was a lot younger and more outgoing when I first played Splatoon 2, and didn't think much of it at the time, not even showing up for its Final Fest. When 3 came out, I was on the cusp of adulthood. I had seen, played, and done many more things than I had 4 years prior. For most of 3's life, I was desperate to rekindle the whimsy I felt playing 2. But once I let go of that desire, I found myself forming at least a few memories that different as they were, made me feel joy all the same. Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3 were only supported for around 2 years each, but the memories I've made with them have and will last far longer than that. And even if Splatoon 4 ends up feeling wildly different from 3, just like that game did with 2, I'm sure I'll still make plenty of good memories with it when it comes. I'm sure many of you want to rekindle the joy and wonder you felt when you were younger. I know I do. But despite what it may seem, that point in time had its problems too. The past, present, and future all have their own ups and downs. You're unaware of the downs when you're young, and it gets progressively harder to ignore them as you get older. I know how awful things are right now, but clinging to the peaceful days of yore is not the way to go. There is still so much beauty in the world today, and there will be tomorrow. So just go out there and seize the moment, living your life to its fullest. It doesn't matter if it takes something as simple as a paintball shooter with sea creatures to learn how. Just please value your time, because you don't know what you have until it's gone.